Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist Shreveport podcast. I'm here with Martha Marak, the Executive Director of the Food Bank of Northwest Louisiana.
Yes.
How are you, Martha?
I'm great. How are you today?
Doing good. I'm excited to be with you.
Well, I'm too. Thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to be the Executive Director?
Sure. It's a somewhat of an interesting story. I'm
Okay.
originally from New Orleans and
Nice.
never in a million years dreamed that I would leave New Orleans, but I met my husband now, well, when we were both living in New Orleans. He's originally from Shreveport.
Okay.
And we married and we're living in New Orleans and we started our family. And we recognized that Shreveport was really a great place to raise a family. And housing at the time, this was in the late 80s, the very late 80s, where housing was very, very affordable as compared to New Orleans. And so we decided that we would move and have never regretted making that decision. So it was a move back for him and a restart for me. And when I first moved here, this would have been early of 1990, I went and worked for Mall St. Vincent as their marketing director. And so I spent 17 years as the marketing director for Mall St. Vincent and then added Pure Bossier Mall. And, you know, probably by the early 2000s, we saw malls really start to make a transformation, and I thought it would be time to make a break or try something different. And as the marketing director, I was very involved in the community, knew about the work of the food bank, loved what they do.
Yeah.
And I noticed they were looking for an executive director at the time, and I applied, and I've been there almost 16 years and have had I known how much I would have loved food banking, I would have left the mall many years before. But it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
That's amazing. I love how you said that. I never knew that I would love food banking. And I can't imagine anyone, not to say that it's a bad thing, but I can't imagine anyone like thinking about that in their normal day-to-day life. So
yeah, it's kind of corny. You know, we all talk about our happy place, and my happy place actually is my office. I love being there. I love the work we do. I love watching the food come in because we're a giant distribution center. And so I love watching the trucks come in and our trucks full going out to people in need. And, you know, while we're not a faith-based organization, if you ask any of our staff, we will all tell you the same thing. We are doing the Lord's work, and it's so rewarding.
that's great.
Yeah.
And so what is the Food Bank of Northwest Louisiana?
Well, that's a great question. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what a food bank is and what kind of how it all started. So actually, food banking started probably about 35 years ago in Arizona, and it slowly, very organically kind of filled the United States and crept through different communities. And so we didn't invent this, of course. Food banking, there are about 200 food banks in the United States. And in the state of Louisiana, there are 5. And between the 5 of us, and we know our sister food banks very, very well.
Yeah.
We have divided all 64 parishes into service areas.
Okay.
So for our food bank here out of Shreveport, we support Caddo, Bossier, Webster, Claiborne, Bienville, and Red River Parish, those 7 parishes.
Goodness.
There's another food bank in northeast Louisiana that takes over at Lincoln Parish, where we leave off our geographic area and go all the way to the Mississippi border. And then central Louisiana in Alexandria takes the mid part of the state, and then there's a food bank in New Orleans and in Baton Rouge. And so the work of a food bank is very interesting. It's very grassroots, but it's very sophisticated at the same time.
Okay.
And so what a food bank does is we gather food from many different places, and we partner with nonprofit organizations, churches, after-school programs, schools, anyone who has a mission to help low-income individuals, children, or families with the food to meet their food need. they are welcome to be partners of ours.
Okay.
And so we partner with about 130 different organizations that order food from us regularly, weekly. They can order as often as they want, but
Yeah.
most order weekly. And then the food goes to their locations, and then it's given to the folks in need.
Yeah.
So really, if a client came to the food bank, we are a distribution center that we're not providing client service. We would refer them to something in that particular client's neighborhood by zip code. And the reason we do that is that if someone lives, say, in Benton, Louisiana, and they need food, we don't expect them to drive all the way to Shreveport, because if they are low on funds for food, they don't have money for gas.
Yeah.
Right? And so we'll partner with a church in Benton, and that way it's right there in their community. And that's why we have so many partners, because we've got food sprinkled all over those 7 parishes.
Yeah.
So that we can be where our clients need help.
Nice. And so if someone was like in Benton and they needed food, I'm guessing there are already probably nonprofits already set up in Benton that you would just connect them with to say that they can go to these places to get food.
So what we ask clients to do is to just call us if someone needs help, and we would find out. The first question we would ask them is, what's your zip code?
Yeah.
And we would try and match something. We don't have like every single zip code, but pretty much that if someone needed food, we would say, well, if this is your zip code, this is what's closest to where you live, this is when they're open, these are the hours they're open, and what they would need to do. So everyone who receives food through our network has to show proof of income, and they have to have a photo ID. So there are some rules and regulations to it.
Okay.
But basically, if someone lives, the poverty level follows like SNAP benefits or any government benefits. So basically, if you're already receiving benefits, you pretty much qualify to get food from one of our partners.
Okay. Excuse me, getting over a cold. So like sorry, I'm trying to get a question together, but when like a person is trying to qualify for these benefits, you're saying they
would go to a food pantry, like one of our churches, and they would have to qualify there. And it's very easy. You fill out an application, and once you are accepted into the program, then you can come once a month and receive food each month.
Okay.
And, a lot of what we see mainly, I guess the largest part of our population that we help are our seniors. So we know that there are 2 populations that really suffer the most when there's lack of food, and that's children and seniors. And, it's really unfortunate that most recently we've seen so many of our seniors raising grandchildren without those benefits for many, many reasons. And so mostly we're seeing that population tend to come to our locations more because they need the most help. For so many of our seniors, they worked and they are receiving Social Security benefits. And I guess, for a lot of people, now with medications and being health conscious, people are living longer, and those benefits aren't really increasing.
Yeah.
And so where they're not really keeping up with inflation, because you're paying your meds, you're paying your Medicaid, all of your bills, and Social Security doesn't rise the same as inflation. And so it's really challenging for a lot of our seniors.
Yeah.
So we love to help them. We really love to help all of our populations, but we do have a program specifically for seniors. It's our Senior Box program. And I think years ago when the food bank started, that was one of our main programs, and it continues to be. But but what we do now is that program really tends to be more for rural seniors that are in kind of our outlying populations where we don't have as many food pantries and places for folks to get food.
Yeah.
And so, like Red River and Cotton Valley, and these are small towns where there aren't grocery stores. And it's a real challenge. And if you're homebound, if you don't have transportation, you cannot drive.
Yeah.
And there's no grocery store in your community. This is a real challenge to get folks food. And so we love our Senior Box program where we can partner with organizations to help us get those food boxes right into those communities and check. It's a welfare check too. Someone will go and distribute that box, check on that senior, make sure they're okay, and give them about a 50-pound box of food, and we do that monthly.
Wow.
And it's a very rewarding program, and it's tough to see these seniors. I hate to say that they're neglected because that's unfair. As a parent, I know I want my children to go have jobs and futures that are brighter than what I had.
Yes.
And so a lot of these seniors, their family have moved away for better jobs, for better lifestyle, and they're kind of left behind.
Yeah.
And so we're so grateful that we can provide that sustenance for them, and they really, really need it.
Yeah, and it sounds like food deserts is one of the issues that y'all are solving, because we've heard or I don't know how many other people have heard the term, but being on staff here with Michelle Osborne, who's our local missions person, she brings up the concept of food deserts pretty often for people who aren't able to get to like a grocery store.
That's
Or
right.
it's not like walking distance to a grocery store or even...
Or bus service.
Yeah. And what you're talking
There's no
about...
transportation. These are tough. And also in the rural outlying areas, there aren't a lot of nonprofit support. Like in Shreveport and in Bossier, where, of course, where it's populated, you're going to have more service and you're going to have more resources. But when you get outside of city limits, all of that dwindles even more and more. And so it's a real challenge for something that's needed just as basic that most of us take for granted, food.
Absolutely. Because I think whenever my wife and I, we've driven across Texas a few times, and there are those towns where like you drive through this town and it's just one of those, it's like, blink and you miss it, but there are people living there.
Exactly.
And there's no like local grocery store, and like the closest Walmart is, 10, 20 miles away.
Right.
And that's obviously not going to be in walking distance. And those little tiny towns are usually they don't have a huge economic engine to drive jobs and to give people the sort of, lifestyle that they would need to be able to go to outer or bigger cities.
That's right.
Because most of those people are probably on like some sort of Social Security or their retirement.
Well, and it takes, you have to have a reliable vehicle that, you can drive to Walmart. So there's a lot of, it's very complex, and it's a lot of challenges. We're really thrilled to be able to help in the way that we can.
Yeah. And I love it because I know for all the blessings of Walmart and like these big box stores, it has created probably some widespread consequences for people in those outerlying towns where like the smaller grocery stores aren't able to make it because they're having to compete with Walmart, and they're not able to sustain themselves the way that they would have in the past, where, a grocery store would not only be a place for people to get food, but it also provides a small business economic engine for that little community to be able to prosper. And with Walmart being close to those places, like it just eventually suffocates those smaller businesses to the point
it's
where
hard to compete.
Yes,
Very
exactly.
hard to compete.
And then just over time, those small towns dwindle even further until there's hardly anyone there, and it's just Social Security or retirement people. And
it's very challenging.
Yes. And so the work that y'all do is, I can't imagine how many lives it's potentially saved just because you're bringing food to people who don't have the means to leave to get to what they need. And so do y'all start the nonprofits in these areas to bring them food? Like if you learn about a tiny town like in Red River, Louisiana, that doesn't have a grocery store or something like that, do y'all, if there isn't a nonprofit there, do y'all send people with a nonprofit to that area?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's there's no one set way that we find partners. Traditionally, we have worked with churches and existing nonprofits, but sometimes in smaller communities, there are none. And when that happens, we do something called a mobile food pantry, where we will get, if there's a town administrator, some have town mayors, we will partner with this local city government to see if they will help us get the word out to the community, and then we will bring a truck, and our staff will seek volunteers, get a group together, travel to that community, and we actually do that work ourselves, not in a brick and mortar, but just outside. And we call that mobile. The food comes off the truck, the cars line up. It's a just-in-time inventory.
Yes.
Oh, we sign up people right then and there and qualify them in their cars, put a box in their car, and get them off to where they need to go.
Wow.
So we did a lot of that during COVID when it was really hard for us to all be together in a building. So we've learned how to adapt to whatever the situation. And then a lot of times we will meet with local governments if we can't find a partner to see if they know of a group to help us put together to do this. But more times we find an existing church or group that will be willing to partner with us. But if not, we love those types of challenges to see how we can creatively solve that and still stay within our operating guidelines.
Yeah.
Food safety is a real issue, and so a lot of the food that we get, a lot of our food, we're like recyclers. We're taking food at the very end of its life cycle, and that's, we're not paying a lot for it, but it's good, but it needs to go quick.
Yes.
And so we really try and work with folks that we can just get that food out as quickly as we can.
And so when y'all get that food, like, is it mostly, just thinking back to whenever we've made donations to the food bank, it is usually, at least for our house, and I don't know if other people are guilty of this, but like you give like what you don't need anymore, or those types of things, because like you said, it's at the end of its life. You don't know how much longer it's going to last, and so, but whenever you said y'all purchase things,
we do.
Is it the same situation where it's at the end of its life and companies are just trying to offload it?
Yes.
Okay.
So our food comes from many different sources. About 40% of our inventory comes from USDA through the Farm Bill. This is the same program. A lot of these foods are grown specifically for these programs, like for school lunches. And so in the Farm Bill, there's monies that have been designated to help support our farmers, to plant things specifically for food banks and for the school system.
Oh, wow.
And so we love that food. And so that's about 40% of our inventory. And then...
and so is that like fresh, like local farmers are paid, or is it like a agricultural farm?
It's all over farm. It's farmers all over the United States. It's pistachios from California to East Coast. I mean, it's all over the United States, and whichever USDA has contracted with farmers for. And I think farmers have to bid on that through a different process through USDA. But foods we get a list of available foods that we can order, and we get an amount of money. It's not actually dollars that we get, but we get an amount that we can spend on this list of food from farmers. And it could be meat, it could be produce. It's one year we got oranges from Florida. I mean, it really is random, the type of foods that we get. But we love those because they are first quality. They're grocery store quality. It's it's the same thing that you and I would purchase if we went to a store.
Yeah.
Another large part of our inventory comes from direct donations from manufacturers like Kellogg's and Del Monte. And so before the pandemic, we used to see a lot more, we call that surplus food. It's food that they overproduced in hopes that they would have orders for, and they didn't get those orders. And so to keep their inventory turning, typically they would donate that product to a food bank. And so all we would do is pay the shipping on it, and we would get a whole tractor trailer full of food donated to us, which is remarkable. We're starting to see a little bit more of that come back, but not anywhere as it was before the pandemic. The pandemic really kind of knocked the whole supply chain out of whack.
So there wasn't as much supply? during the pandemic?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And if you remember when you would go to the grocery store, you'd see big gaps of things that,
Yes.
the stores just couldn't get. And we're still seeing that in some cases. It's starting to fill back in, but it's been
Yes.
a very slow return.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of our inventory, big part of our inventory, comes from growers, from farmers. So for many, many years, and it still happens, but we're hoping not as much as it did before, farmers get, they plant their crop and they harvest the best. And traditionally, their land is how they produce their income. So they harvest what they need for orders for grocery stores or whatever, and then they would just plow under what they didn't need so that they could get their next crop in the ground because they need that to generate revenue.
Yeah.
And so we are members of a national hunger awareness organization called Feeding America. And the work that Feeding America has done with help of the food banks nationally is to help farmers understand that by plowing under those they're turning back into the dirt, that produce, there's a real market for it. It's not a huge market, but there is a market for it. And so what we have done as a network of food banks is worked with farmers to say, give us time, just give us a little amount of time, and we go in and hire gleaners, just like in the Bible. And we glean those fields.
I love it.
And we take basically their waste. Now, it's not the prettiest produce because it's not, it's misshaped or it's odd sized. But nonetheless, it's food.
Yeah.
And so
It's
we
quality
will
food.
pay, around 27 cents a pound for the gleaning services and for transportation. So think about it. You go to the grocery store and apples are $1.99 a pound and we're paying 27 cents. You can imagine what that apple might look like, but it's good. The product is good. And if you're hungry, you don't care if your apple is not like the most perfect apple, right?
Absolutely.
So a lot of what we do, about a third of our inventory is produce, which a lot of people don't know. We have huge walk-in coolers and freezers at the food bank, massive.
Wow.
And so about a third of our inventory is fresh produce. So our goal at the food bank is of course, it's to provide food, but we want to provide food that follows the USDA My Plate recommended diet, where 51% is fresh produce and vegetables, 13% is dairy, 19% is protein. So if we expect you or someone to eat of that, then we feel like our inventory has to be of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so that's our goal. And we're getting really close to it to be sure that we have the proper nutrition, because for our clients, they're eating more when they go to the grocery store, more in the center of the grocery store. But when you think about it, when you shop, if you shop just the perimeter where all your refrigerated items are and produce, that's the most expensive food.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we not only want to provide food, but we want to give them the most nutritious food that we can afford to provide. It's expensive. It's very expensive.
It is. And I think that what you said about shopping the outside of the store, anyone who's gone on a diet, like a paleo diet, keto or whatever,
That's exactly right.
They tell you shop the outside of the grocery store because that's where the most nutritious food is and the most probably low calorie food is as well.
Right.
And
but it's very expensive.
Yes, it is.
And the inner aisles, that's where most of your preservatives are. You see a lot of salt and sugar, more shelf-stable foods that will last a long time, and they're the least healthy.
Yes. Unfortunately.
It
so
is.
have y'all seen much traction with the farmers who
we do.
are around gleaning?
We do. We get a fair amount, and they're so. Again, we have to pay for the transportation to bring those truckloads of food in. And so we have like a geographic boundary that we know how far the cost of freight is. So that's affordable within our budget. And so, because bringing apples in, say, from Washington State, that could be almost $10,000 in freight, and that's a lot of money for us. But if we if we stay in the Texas, Oklahoma, Florida kind of area, that freight is a lot more affordable unless gas fuel prices really escalate. So, there's a lot of factors to it.
Yeah. And so just because I know a few people who enjoy, like, I guess, fun farming, if that's a way to talk about, or micro farming.
Yes.
If they or if they want to give, like, to the food bank, how would they do that?
Yeah, and we gladly accept all of that. We have local folks in our community that have hens, and sometimes they'll bring us eggs. Or if you planted winter crops or winter garden or even summer and you had an abundance, we would love to accept that.
Okay.
Our warehouse is we moved off of Texas a couple of years ago off of Texas Avenue. We are at 285 Mount Zion Road.
Okay.
So we're between 3132 and Burt Coons off of Linwood Avenue. We're south of town.
Okay.
And we're there from 8 in the morning till 3:30. Our docks are open, and just if someone wanted to come, just pull up to a dock, 1, 2, or 3. They're all numbered, and we will help unload it. If you can get it in your car, we'll get it out of your car, and we'll actually receipt you if you wanted to use that as a donation.
Okay. And so is there anything that people need to know about preparing the food? Like, does it need to be stored or brought in a way that it's going to be stored long term, if it's like produce or anything like that?
No, produce is fine anyway. Of course, any kind of canned goods or non-perishable foods. The only place where we get into requirements is if food has already been prepared. A lot of times, if somebody has an event and they want to donate to us, we will accept it, but it has to already be frozen.
Okay.
You can't just bring us big warm pans of food. It has to be frozen, and that's for food safety.
Absolutely.
Because we don't know how it transported in your car, but by freezing things, it stops all of that breakdown of food, and so frozen is the best way to go. And we do pick up, so we have a pretty big pickup program. Walmart and Sam's is probably one of our largest donors. We pick up from them. I know, it really is. And not just us, food banks all across the United States. If I asked one of my peers, they would probably tell you that Walmart and Sam's are their largest donors. We pick up from all of the grocery stores in our service area 3 times a week, and it's a lot of food. And it's a lot of it is produce, it's surplus foods. The product is fine. It's just happens to be
not marketable now.
Right. So a lot of that we get a lot of items that are either mismarked, like so many companies now are so brand conscious, like Gatorade, like Orange Gatorade has a green cap, but if it runs through production and they put a blue cap, they're not going to sell it. And instead of throwing away, that's typically what would come to a food bank.
Okay.
Mispackaged goods.
Yes.
Where the product itself is fine, it's just the labeling on it got a little askew.
Yeah. And I love that because, I mean, now that you mention it, I wonder, like, what happens to all of those, like, Little Debbie's and, like, those little
cakes. It all
cakes.
comes to food banks.
Because, I mean, you think about it, the day after Christmas, they're nowhere to be found in a grocery store.
They're gone, because they need that space to get ready for the next season, and it all comes to us. The red, white, and blue Oreos after the 4th of July. I mean, we could go on, but it's all that seasonal stuff will come to us.
Do you have a favorite season that you like that's best for the food bank?
I think Easter is a big one.
Okay.
Easter candy's pretty and fun, and
Nice.
Yeah.
And one thing you said about COVID taught you how to be more agile and mobile for those communities that don't have like a place to work with, and y'all would go and, like, I guess it would be kind of a pop-up shop or something.
That's right. And you mentioned Michelle Osborne earlier. Michelle worked with us very closely with a lot of volunteers here from this church. One of the things, if you remember, was when school closed, a lot of our children, so we support about 75,000 individuals each year with food, and about 20,000 of them are children. And we were very concerned because most of these children rely on school for breakfast and lunch.
Yeah.
And so we learned quickly, we saw a huge need as schools closed, that where in the world would these children eat? And so we did a lot of pop-ups of actual meals for children that they could go at different places and pick up pick up meals. So
that's great.
yeah, it really was. It was very rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
We did thousands and thousands of meals till the schools reopened.
Good. And so is that something y'all are seeing more of, like with, I guess like we've talked about the migration of like smaller communities moving into bigger cities and kind of leaving that food desert? Are y'all seeing more of a need to go to these places?
You know, we prefer if we can find partners in those communities versus us do it, because we don't know every community, and some of these communities are, I don't want to say that they're unwilling to welcome us, but we don't know the key players. So it's a very quick to learn experience for us. So we love to partner with existing organizations only because they already have volunteers.
Yeah.
They know the people in the community that have the highest need.
Yeah.
So that's really easier for us, but we're willing to do the hard work if we need to.
Yeah.
We're not afraid of hard work at all.
I'm sure it's humbling for those people in that community too, because you think of seniors on Social Security or welfare, it's never easy to say that you can't do something or you need help.
Exactly. Exactly. It is. It's very humbling. And so we try and make it as, as dignified as we can. So one of the things that we were talking about having dignity with food distribution. So when we moved from our former building on Texas Avenue, it was right when we were coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of our pantries, about 25% of our pantries had closed only because they were run by senior volunteers. And if you remember, that was the most vulnerable population. Yeah. And so rightfully so, they stopped. And then, it's when you stop doing something and you try and get back into it, it's hard.
Yes.
And a lot of them just said, this is really physical. I just can't do it anymore. And so our staff decided that we needed to help get more. How could we get more food out into the community? So we decided to take our former building on Texas Avenue and make it an actual food pantry where people could come get food. And the remarkable thing is that within a year, we quickly became our second largest distribution center. Wow. And so we couldn't believe how big the need was. And unfortunately, right after that, we sold the building, and we were fortunate we could stay. The new owner extended a little time to us until he had his plans. But eventually we had to move out. And so our board then quickly thereafter we did our strategic plan. Yeah. And we decided that this was something that we needed to do. So we are building another building on our campus on Mount Zion Road. And it's going to be a food pantry, but it's going to be a different type of food pantry. And it's going to be what's called client's choice. So once a client comes in and qualifies, they'll actually be given a shopping cart. Okay. And they'll be able to shop and select the foods. If they have any dietary restrictions, if they have diabetes or gluten intolerance, they'll actually be able to select the foods that they would like. And then it'll also have a demonstration kitchen. So, we talk about Walmart being our largest donor, and sometimes we get very unusual fruits and vegetables. And we thought, well, if we're going to hand someone a giant papaya that's, 18 inches long, we've got to show them what to do with it. And me too.
I love to cook, but I would not know what to do with a papaya.
Yeah, a super papaya. It was huge. I thought it was a butternut squash. It was so big. But
wow.
So we're going to do some cooking demonstrations at time of food distribution to do some education. And, I'm going to make a plea, because we will need lots of volunteers. This will be during the week and on weekends, but we're going to need folks to help sit-down jobs where we use little tablets to capture client data. So if people want to sit, and not have to be quite so physical, if they have limitations, we have volunteer jobs for them. We'll have personal shoppers that will help go walk with the client and help them make their selection of what they want. And then we'll have folks that will help bag, because they're going to actually have grocery carts and move the food from the grocery cart to a box or a bag to get out to their car. So we have lots of different opportunities in our new our new food pantry, and we
That's
would
great.
welcome all of the volunteers.
And so the cooking class, is that because, like, is there a need for kind of like relearning cooking? Because a few
Absolutely.
times we've heard, or different guests have told us, like the trend of cooking for yourself is kind of going away, and there needs to be a rebuilding of like the, new generation to teach the younger generation how to cook.
Absolutely. And healthy cooking too. If we hand you a cabbage, we don't want you to fry a half a pound of bacon and smother that. Then you've
Yes.
taken all the nutritional value out of it. We want you to be
It
able
tastes
to
delicious,
it,
but
it's really good, right? But probably not the healthiest thing for you.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to not only just demonstrate how to cook it, but how is it healthy? And then how do you take the products that we give you and really make them stretch so you can get the most meals from them too. We actually do this already in DeSoto Parish. We teach 2 classes. We teach Pick a Better Snack, which is geared for children when they come home from school. Don't have a honey bun and a Coke. Let's try and teach you how to make something easy that's a little more nutritious.
Yes.
And then we do a class with adults on how to take your SNAP dollars, what to purchase to create a healthy meal where your dollars will go the furthest and you'll get the most food for it. So we'll do similar type programs at our new facility too.
Good.
Yeah.
The younger me is definitely crying because that was my go-to snack in high
A
school.
honey bun and
was
a Coke.
honey bun and
Look,
Coke.
we see it all the time. Yeah, and think about it. If you're really, really hungry and you have $1 and there's a convenience store in your town, we know exactly what you're doing. You're getting a honey bun and a Coke. And that's why we want to be there with some fresh produce to say, hey, let's try and do something different.
I love it. And so I personally love cooking, so I'm going to ask a little bit more about the cooking class.
Sure.
Like, what are they going to learn? Like, is it the basics of like how to put together a dish, or is it like skills in the kitchen?
It's going to be more how to put together a healthy meal.
Okay.
Now, if we have to teach some cooking skills along the way, like how to chop, and we're prepared to do that for sure.
Yes. I do love following Instagram pages that have like people who have never cooked before, and then you see like all of the crazy things that happen. Like someone uses a pressure cooker for the first time and like explodes a hole in their ceiling.
Yeah.
Or they put an entire package of what was supposed to be in the oven into the oven.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
so anyway.
Yeah. Very literal there.
Yes. And I don't know. I love those things because I was once that person.
Well, hey, we all have to learn from somewhere, right? So we'll actually show them how to do it. So hopefully by watching us do it, they'll see how to do it. But the room will be set up that down the road, if we want to actually have each of the folks in the room actually cook along, we'll be able to do that. We probably won't start out that way.
Yeah.
But you know how things are when they're new. You're not real sure until you get into it. So we're adaptable, and so we'll go with the flow.
Yeah. This podcast is prime example number 1.
Yeah.
Of adapting.
Right. Well, this is fun.
It is. And so, oh crap, I had a question. I just lost it. But, so what have you learned the most from being in this position? Because you said you started out in marketing for Mall St. Vincent and the Pierre Bossier Mall.
Yeah.
And moving into this position, never seeing yourself in it before. Like, what have been like the most, the experiences that have grown you the most, and what you've learned the most from it?
Well, I've seen a lot of poverty, and I've learned that I would not even begin to tell anyone that I understand poverty. It's very complex. I've read the books, and I've seen a lot of folks living in poverty, and I still don't understand all of it. It's very, very hard decisions. It's very sad, and it's very complicated. And so poverty has probably been the biggest thing for me to, I hate to say struggle with, because just to adapt to. And so it's very complicated. And then I have a whole lot of senseless data in my head, like how many pallets fit on a truck, and what does a pallet weigh, and all the operational nonsense that goes with running a distribution center. But that's kind of the fun stuff, and so it's just been an amazing journey, and I'm so grateful to do it with such an incredible team that I have the pleasure to work with every day. We're we're not a large group. We're 26 employees, but we snap together like a puzzle. And
That's
it's
great.
pretty incredible when we all come together what we can accomplish.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah.
And so do y'all have anything that you're working towards? Because you said you moved to a new building on Zion?
On Mount Zion Road, that's right. Well, our biggest project is the food pantry, and so we're hoping to that's a $2.5 million project, and so we're working on finishing that up. And then, we're going to pause. We're going to let that operate for a while. Down the road, one of the things that we're thinking about is one of our, we talked about seniors and senior hunger. The other issue is childhood hunger, children. And we see a lot of childhood hunger. And we've got programs. We've got our backpack program, which helps children. We provide at-risk schools with high population of at-risk youth. A gallon-sized baggie. It's about 7 pounds of food. Now, your church has definitely contributed to that year after year. Michelle has come out with the youth group and donated to that program. We've been so privileged to have them come. They came for a tour and made donations to that program. It's a fabulous program, but we see a lot of chronic hunger with our children, and we want to be able to help these kids. I think that if I'm 5 minutes late getting to lunch, I'm hungry, but a lot of our children really know hunger, which is very unfortunate. And so this is a great program because children on Fridays will get this bag of food and they take it home with them in their backpack. And when on Saturday and Sunday, when there's no food or very little sustenance at home, these children have child-friendly foods that they can eat on their own, and it's a great program.
That's great.
It is. And then we have our after-school meal program where we provide meals for children that are in after-school programs or during the summer. And that's a program that, we've used restaurants in the past to help us provide those meals because we don't have a kitchen. And I think when you ask what's in the future, that's something that we really need to look at on how do we do a better job at addressing those hunger needs for our children, and how do we get more meals out to children that need it when school is closed. It's a huge opportunity.
I love it.
I haven't quite figured out all of the components to that, but we will. We will.
Definitely have faith in you.
Yeah, thank you.
I love it. Is there anything we're missing or anything I haven't asked?
We're just grateful for the church's support. We've been very fortunate to be a grant recipient year after year, and that money that we've received has helped us acquire a lot of produce that we talked about, and we're just so grateful for the partnership.
Good. Definitely.
And we need volunteers all the time.
So if you need something to do, then contact Food Bank of Northwest Louisiana.
That's right. We'd love to have you.
Is there any person in specifically?
Just the main number. If they call our number at 675-2400 and just say, I want to volunteer, we'll connect you to the right person.
All right. I love it. Martha, thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
All right. Well, guys, we will see you all next time.